Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jyoti Arora here from Economic Times, and it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the second edition of the Economic Times live webinar from Classroom to Career: How to Prepare Today's Kids for Tomorrow, powered by Adobe. The need of the hour around the world today is to prepare students for the modern economy. While most of the parents and students are busy chasing IITs and IIMs of the country, there is also a certain section of the society that takes a route less traveled. Cinema and art have evolved as a preferred professions over the years, and while engineers and doctors also exist, film and art schools have also stood their ground and evolved with time. In today's program, experts will throw light on various factors you need to know while aiming from classroom to career. And to understand more about how the careers and technology have evolved over the years and the changing trends of the industry, today we have a very special guest with us who's a well-known educationist and a change catalyst, Ms. Meghna Ghaipuri, the president of Whistling Woods International. Welcome, Ms. Puri. Over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. Uh, it's um, it's actually odd to be doing a session, a keynote in this way, but I am also thankful for the opportunity. Can everyone hear me and see me? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning.
So, good morning. So first of all, let me thank you all and Economic Times for inviting me to give this keynote. I would like to take this opportunity you and your families are safe and home together. I would also like to express my thanks to those people who are tirelessly working on the front lines of the fight against this pandemic. I think nothing that we say is enough for the work that they're putting in today. It is because of people like them that we are able to meet on this platform today. Maybe not in person, but at least the wonders of technology allows us to connect and to be together. So to move on to the focus for today, which is to talk about creative careers and the employability for students post finishing a course at a college or educational institution. We will also touch upon the changing face of technology and how we can use this technology to further our creativity and not allow it to overburden that. It is a broad discussion indeed, and I hope I can cover most of the points within the time given. And I'm told that there's going to be a Q&A as well, so I look forward to lots of questions there. So the word creative is a strange one. It's seemingly, sorry, somebody's not on mute. Yeah. So the word creative is a strange one. It seemingly has infinite definitions to it, and very often people can struggle to explain it in any clear shape or form. Is creativity something that is God-given talent, or is it something that can be learned or taught? This is at the heart of a creative education, and I go as far as to say that all education today needs to be creative. All innovation comes from creativity, and innovation is happening all around us in all the industries that we see. That wouldn't necessarily, earlier get a creative tag. So, I'm including engineering and medicine here. Business processes, coding and software, science and medicine, and of course in the arts and crafts. Creativity touches us all, and to simply define this as art would be hugely handicap all those. I believe all real innovations comes from creativity. The ability to see all things in new ways, or to see new things that no one can see. Whether you are doing the former or the latter, you are being creative. For those, so for too long, education around us has been the reverse of this. Steeped in function and a cookie cutter approach, we simply believed that all young people could be treated and taught in the same way and achieve the same results. This is naive, according to me, and we need to accept that. Like all problems are different, people are different too. And new ways to teaching needs to be at the core of addressing these individual needs. This is where education gets creative. And in courses relating to the arts and crafts education, especially. Art, unlike maths or accounting, is subjective. Please don't think I'm belittling those subjects. I'm not, but simply pointing out a difference. In maths, for example, everyone should get the right answer, even though I think there's always some chaos there, right? Kidding. So in maths, everyone should get the right answer, even though their methods of getting there could be different. This should be encouraged, of course. But in the arts, not just will everyone's process be different, but so will their outcome. And this too needs to be understood and actually celebrated. The nurturing of creativity has to be the basis of creative courses. Confidence building and allowing students to express their inner self is what will bring out the best, the very best in them. Calling a course creative and then telling all students that there is only one way to work towards something is counterproductive and will cause huge problems and strip away at the very creativity you wish to encourage. Instead, students need to be listened to, given them to explore and find themselves, and then be asked to express themselves to the best of their ability. Some will struggle, and we need to give them the belief and the voice to talk about their vision so that we can understand them and then see their art through their eyes without our own biases and prejudice. This is how an educational institute truly becomes creative and innovative. And this has to be the way forward for all creative courses and for the students who join. A creative career, though, is not like this at the beginning. Careers are about hard work, dedication, and responsibility. The creative business is risky and expensive. And though your education and your innovation, you have worked hard to find within yourself, will be a huge value later. To rise up the ladder, you will need dedication. This is no different in any other career. No doctors join a hospital straight out of medical school and is invited immediately to do heart surgery, for example. It can take up to 2 years for a new doctor to get into an operation theater, and many more till they are doing surgery on their own. And this is true for engineering or hospitality or any career that you look at. Why should a creative job be different? Because it's creative? No. This is this is a career um, so this is a misconception that has driven many to distraction. There is a ladder in all careers, and there is no test for talent. Talent is something you use when you get an opportunity, but getting the opportunity means hard work and perseverance. If you have those qualities, then chances will come that it is when you are really ready to put that creativity to use. Education in a creative course will allow you to thrive when you get your chance. So while, of course, you can join the industry without any education and foundation, but I feel it's really important to get that foundation right. You have the experience, you have learned to manage people and the resources that are in front of you, and you know yourself and know your abilities to the best. This is what an educational platform gives you. So to use a reference from cricket here, to hit a six, you have to swing the bat. And for that, you have to get to the crease. Hard work gets you to the crease. Creativity and talent helps you swing that bat. Six, well, that is a lot of luck and some destiny, but I'm sure if you get all these things in the right balance as a student, you can achieve it. This, though, is also an era of technological change. Perhaps in our lifetimes, we have seen more changes in technology than any other generation in the history of mankind, and still it is continuing. Rapidly, today, digital tools and technology are hand in hand with the creative process. Film, design, media, animation, music, fashion, all these have a lot of technology embedded in them. And without this technology, we would not see the products we see today and would not be able to mass produce the way we do today, especially when it comes to content. And during this lockdown, all of us are stuck at home and watching a lot of things on OTT platforms available to us. So we are all really appreciating all those creative people who've learned to make content for these platforms. So, so does technology? So does that mean technology is more important? No. Technology will always only be an enabler, according to me, something to help people with creativity outline their vision. It's a tool for us to display our imagination. Clearly, we must understand technology and move with it, but we can never accept that it becomes the creator. That will always be us, the human brain, and it is the center of creativity, and technology follows that design. Whistling Woods International prides itself at being at the very cusp of technology and innovation. in the creative arts, and I'm grateful for all these amazing partners we have in this area. However, it's the faculty and the amazing inputs and mentorship they give the students that helps produce truly special outcomes from the technology available. So not the technology alone, it has to be a partnership. It is important to lay the students' foundations right and then teach them the tools to help express it. And yes, even build on it. Today, technology is hugely important for students to learn, especially right now as we are talking on this webinar, as it makes them more in tune with the industry and more up to date with what is happening in such a dynamic business. Most importantly, though, it helps them become more flexible, knowing that there will be new technology coming soon and they will need to be students all their lives to ensure a long and successful career. So I personally really believe in the power of, so the last part of my keynote was actually, they asked me to share a mantra that I really believe in. So I really believe in the past, 14 years of running Whistling Woods, I've seen students come in and come out, and I've seen the ones that actually made it really, really successful in the industry, and some who didn't, maybe even change their careers after they left. So from that learning, I would say that I believe that in this industry, in any creative field, especially, the power of positive thought and having the right attitude in life has to be your mantra. The power of being positive and staying positive is something that is often thrown around as a cliche, but I believe it is fundamental to having a successful career in business, as inherently risky and competitive as this one. Your creativity is being judged. And I have just alluded to that creativity is just a reflection of yourself. So if a filmmaker makes a film, the film gets reviewed and judged. It's not the film that is being judged. You actually end up taking it personally because it was your vision and it was actually a reflection of your own life. So that in itself can be psychologically really, really challenging to accept. And that is where most people kind of get into areas of depression or go through failures in life and are not able to keep up. So without a positive attitude, there have been many people who have turned inwards and this has made them question themselves that even if they can even succeed in life. So this is not something that helps.
Give it some height.
Sorry, talking to me? No. So this is not something that helps. Obviously, a positive attitude means you always look for the next chance, next opportunity. Always advance to look forward rather than constantly being remorseful about the one that got away. Trust me, in this business, you cannot look backwards and regret. Additionally, it is those who are positive in life who can create content that has positive impact on society. So it is our responsibility as educators to creative students to teach them how to how to take these challenges in their stride and never give up. Finally, having observed this industry now for over 3 decades, I firmly believe it's your hard work, integrity, and a dedication to your craft that are fundamental to getting into the creative business. But positivity and can-do attitude will keep you there longer. So as educators who are dealing with creative students, it's absolutely essential for us to give them that kind of holistic environment and that kind of training where they are able to take failures in their stride as well. No job is too small. No work is too trivial. Mr. Kakkar is on the chat after me, and he will tell you how he has made people learn in his ad agency. I mean, it's an amazing example that he gives every time, and I've seen him in action. It is something that you need to teach your students, that no, bad attitude will not get you anywhere. You need to do the smallest jobs and then shine on the platform that you finally get. So believe in yourself, believe in your ability, and always believe in the best that is yet to come. That, I feel, is the role of us educators in this field of creative education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puri. Thanks a lot for those thoughtful insights. And now I would request Supreet from Adobe to take a quick 5 minutes Q&A with Ms. Puri. And after this, we'll have a quick audience poll. So Supreet, over to you, please.
Thank you, Meghna Gai Puri. Amazing keynote. Starting off with morning on Thursday. So a quick couple of questions to you, Meghna, and then we will also have a few questions from the
Sure.
audience as such. So my first of the thoughts is creativity is no longer an option. It's our future. So what's your
Right.
take on critical thinking, problem solving, and creative confidence as a necessary skill in the current era?
It is, Supit, according to me, problem solving, creative thinking is absolutely essential for creative people. Gone are the days when people used to say that, the creative people are just going to do art and they're not going to actually do, be able to understand their audience and they're just going to make films for themselves. It's not like that at all. There are costs involved here. There are resources which are actually, we're struggling with. If you ever go to a film shoot, you'll realize that when you don't want it to rain, it will rain. When you need the
Mhm.
sunset shot, the sun will set before you set up. So there are all these kind of in our industry we call it jugaad, and I think jugaad is just a nicer way of, or a different way of saying critical thinking and problem solving. So I feel it's absolutely essential, and of course technology has made it so much easier. I remember editing on Steenbecks, which used to be film, and we used to literally sit and stick those films together. And so quickly technology has changed where editing is now, I can do it on my mobile phone. So I think that technology has a huge role to play there, but absolutely necessary to have those two skills as a creative person.
Yeah. So you did mention about the role of technology in the whole schema, and as added a point specifically in terms of a super express highway to deliver your specific outcomes. So what do you think are the critical role that a digital tool plays in the current literacy scheme? And what are the tools that you feel are shaping the students' careers and the next gen in Whistling Woods?
So, at Whistling Woods, from the day we started, we knew that we were going to have a good balance between the three aspects of this business, which is, of course, art and creativity, technology, and business. So it's very important for an artist to know who they're making a film for. So the commercials are really important.
Mhm.
Technology is something that changes every 6 months, if not faster. So we knew at that point, as a film school that was privately funded, we had no help from any investors. We needed to keep our costs low, but we wanted to give the students the best. So right from the start, we tied up with various technology partners. And luckily for us, we were in the right place at the right time with the right heart. So we actually found partners in people like Sony, Apple, Adobe, and we were able to do these tie-ups where our students learn on technology that has not even entered the Indian industry yet. So I've had so many examples of our cinematography students going out in the industry, working on cameras or knowing cameras that even the DOP on the set doesn't know. Again, the assistant cannot replace the DOP because creativity is key here, but at least the assistant can enable a better working and a more efficient working environment with the use of new technology. So we've always believed that with the amount of, there's approximately 10,000 hours of original content that is being created by film and OTT annually, while over 1 lakh users hours of content is created by way of your TikToks and YouTube every month. So there's a lot of content to be created there. So without technology and these partnerships, we would not been able to be where we are. And just to talk about Adobe a little bit, Adobe as it is as a tool is so important for our students because it's easy, it's light, they're able to work with minimum computer usage, and it's a great software. So it gives them that tool that maybe another person without that software won't have. And what technology partners do here as a role is that they give us the training, our students the training, they give us the certification, they give us the heads up on what's going to come next. So our students are always kind of 5 years or maybe 2 years now ahead of the curve.
Great, great. So thank you for those kind words, and express to create impact. And that's the mantra according to Ms. Meghna Gaipuri. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Meghna. I have a quick Q&A poll that's coming up on your screens. Would appreciate if you could respond. Do you think creative career options need a boost in today's education system? You have 20 seconds.
Who do you want to answer this?
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have a 99%, 155 people say yes, and
I want to talk to the two who are saying no.
I think all of us would do. Yeah. So thank you so much, Meghna.
Thank you.
Jyoti.
Thank you. Thank you, Supreet. Thank you so much, Ms. Puri, for sparing your valuable time for us. And I would request if you can
Thank you for
stay
having
back.
me. Yes, I
Thank
will.
you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So for audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to write to us in the chat box towards the right side of your screen, or simply raise your hands and we'll take your questions. And I would request all of you to please be present till the end of the webinar and answer the polls and the feedback. So now it's the time to move on to our next very interesting segment, wherein we'll get to hear from some renowned experts on why non-mainstream will be the new mainstream in 2030. So for this, first I would request and invite Mr. Prahlad Kakkad, ad guru and chairman and founder of the Prahlad Kakkad School of Branding and Entrepreneurship. He has been instrumental in changing the face of advertising in our country, and he's best known for his work on various TV commercials such as Pepsi, Limca, Maggie, etc. It's my pleasure to welcome you, Mr. Kakkad. So let me introduce our new guest, who is someone who's not only a scenographer but a designer and an installation artist, Mr. Suman Jayakrishnan. He is someone who transforms spaces and creates beauty for a range of contexts around the world. Warm welcome, Mr. Jayakrishnan.
Thank you.
With
Supreet.
the eminent guests,
Suman.
joining us in conversation is Mr. Supreet Nagaraju. So Supreet heads the education digital media at Adobe India and South Asia. Over to you, Supreet, please.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Prahlad Kakkar, Mr. Sumant. Thank you for joining in. I'm going to take you through a few, questions that I have, which probably are pondering around minds of various academic leaders on this, forum today. My first, pointer to you, Mr. Prahlad, 1971 to 2000, and now we are in the pandemic era. From economics graduate to an ad guru.
No. Listen, hello. That economics graduate is only to get a job. I actually majored in military strategy.
Okay.
Military history.
So the pointer I wanted to, the pointer where I wanted to get to was, you've been into scuba diving, restaurants, and now true calling in films. So what's your mantra behind this roller coaster ride across Mr. Prahlad?
I discovered a friend and an enemy in my journey. And that is what I try and impart to all. That is, I introduce them to this amazing character called Murphy.
Okay, go, please.
Okay.
Please.
And Murphy says, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. So when everybody else in the world is ticking off the boxes and thinking the job is done, my people, that is the Genesis people, the Genesis tribe or the PKSB tribe, their work begins at the time everybody else's work ends. So the mantra is, don't hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Anticipation, anticipation, anticipation. Everything is about being nimble, being quick. So you remember the little ditty that we used to recite when we were kids? Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. That was in answer to Murphy. And if you do not acknowledge Murphy, he will screw you every time in a different position, regardless of what you do.
That's great. So moving on to Mr. Sumant. Sumant, a unique career path, and there's been a different inspirational thought behind most of your moves. So did you have this vision since NID days, and what inspired you, from the initial days to choose what you're doing today?
I think I was always in a search for truth, and truth is ever changing, your personal truth. And I took everything up as a student, assuming it would be the passion of my life, whether it was photography, whether it was typography, whether it was exhibition. And even the final project I did then was performance, because I love performance. I think it's one of the most truthful expressions that transform you individually. And that led on to multiple things after, which was really a reflection of what India was going through at that point of time. India had opened up its television channels, communication, so I started working in television and film. Then fashion started, I started working in fashion. Then people realized they had enough money and they wanted to reflect themselves, uh, contextually, and therefore I started working on events. And so the repertoire of what I did kept building up. It's not that I stopped doing anything. I just kept starting doing more and more things, and therefore developed a team that could engage with a multiplicity of things. So I think that search for your own truth, what works for you, and it's ever changing. I think that's important even as a student, because the basic impediment you have is the programming that is put into you as a child, that, oh, these are the things that are good things to do. This is what makes you complete, whether it's true or not. So to separate who you are versus what you've been, pounded into thinking is correct, that's very important. And that's very easy to do in the context of a young person's reality today.
That's one of the biggest problems with our education system today, is that they pound you into a shape which you don't necessarily want to go in. And you might be a dreamer and they want to make you into an engineer. And an engineer can also dream. But a dreamer dreams in 36, 24, 36. An engineer dreams in formulas. That's the main difference.
Yeah, Mr. Kakkar, you've been a creative professional ever since pre-dot-com era as well. And what do you think has changed over the decades, and what's kind of driving the shift towards creative careers, and what are your messages for aspirants?
See, we make this huge bogey out of creativity. We think that both Sumant and me are creative because we have long hair and we wear ponytails. It's not a uniform. Hello. That's a personal choice. So creativity, if put it very succinctly and for everybody, is the capacity and the power to dream. Okay. Everybody on this planet dreams. The fact is that some people remember their dreams. Some people dreams are lucid dreaming. Some people can't make out the difference between dreams and reality. And some people just want to forget their dream because they're just too impossible according to them. They don't want to actually address them when they wake up, because they say, it's not safe to dream too much because it takes you into an area of risk. Okay. So we try and teach young people the business of risk. And the entire curriculum that we have today, regardless of the fact that we also adhere to the UGC standards because they want us to give a degree at the end, and parents are very keen on a little piece of paper which you cannot use for anything except putting on your wall, because you can't even use it for toilet paper because it's too hard and it hurts. Okay, so because parents are so keen on that piece of paper, we need to give them a piece of paper. So we have to adhere to whatever the minimum standards are. But much more than what they learn in class, they learn through practical experiences of what we actually put them through, which is remember your dream, follow your dream, and find solutions in life through your dreams. Because dreams are really a reality which you don't acknowledge. You think that being boring, taking a job, being 9 to 5, having 2 children, having a wife, everybody making demands on you, EMI is coming out of your ear. The only loyal person you have in your whole life is your dog, because he doesn't demand anything from you. Everybody else is making a demand on you. So people today, youngsters, think that, this is like a prison. The future is really bleak. What they don't realize is that every job has to be creative if you actually want to be disruptive. And the name of the game today is disruption. Even disruption today has been misused. So what is disruption? It is what you look at today as the reality, and how you go beyond the reality of everybody else's reality and make them look at something totally differently. The same thing. You make them look at the same thing. 2 + 2 is equal to 4, and you make it into 22. And if you can do that, or if you can believe that, and if you can dream that, then your education makes a lot of sense, because then you take out of your education what you need and you junk whatever else is not needed. And frankly, once you have that piece of paper, you never use it again anyway. Because when people go out into the world, it's really all about learning. Your learning curve starts at the time you start traveling, and it doesn't end till the day you die. So if you think that your learning curve is only in school or in college or something like that, perish the thought. Because if that is how you look at education, you're dead in the water. You're going to be like, some poor guy sitting there knowing exactly what he's going to be doing 2 years from now in the same office, on the same desk, with a little higher pay scale. If that's not the kind of life that, frankly, I visualize for the young people who come to me to learn. For them, being adrenaline junkies is the most important part of living, because if you don't take risks and if you don't enjoy taking risks, then you don't have a life.
I still say, when I grow up, I've just turned 51, but when I grow up, what would I like to be?
Precisely.
And I kind of also have come to terms with the fact that your dreams keep changing.
Yes.
And also to accept that, because as you experience more. So the image I have always of any individual person is that you're a beautiful sculpture, right? A really beautiful, like a spherical sculpture, intricate gold. It's all covered up in clay or mud, And as you take a chance and you try something out, a little bit more chips away and reveals the beauty of who you are. And therefore, exactly what you were saying, Prahlad, that as you try more and more things, some things might appear to be a failure. It's actually not. The experience has chipped away another layer of what works, what doesn't, and reveals you. Now, how much of you you will choose to reveal for yourself and discover for yourself in this lifetime is something that, as an educator, you can program into a work process when you're young. Because, once you find a system of how to engage, it doesn't matter. You can keep switching from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, because you understand how to engage. And that engagement, that's the key thing that an education process needs to teach. And therefore, even for example, Preet, for you, in a technological sense, these become tools as one other thing that helps you access something. Because as a creative person, what I've realized now is everything's been discovered. And what you do as a creative person is you put a series of cliches together from the trivia or the information or the research.
Absolutely.
Now, how you put those cliches together and then own it and make it your story, your narrative, that's the key. It's not that you're reinventing something, you're exposing a bit of a story in a particular sequence that makes it feel new and engaging. And that magic, and I call it magic because when you find that new story of really a very old story, is what is exciting about, what keeps you excited about waking up in the day and saying, what shall I do today? Or how do I engage with this? I've never done this particular kind of project or engagement before. How is it going to pan out? And that process, I think, Supreet, is what the education system needs to engage with more and more.
And take the fear of reinventing yourself every 3-4 years. The fact that you're so successful in a particular niche does not mean that you get out of that hole and try something new. And love the process of learning, because that is exhilarating. The process of learning is exhilarating, and until you do something new and push yourself beyond the boundaries of what you think your capabilities are, you will never get that feeling of exhilaration. And that is what is called free falling. That is what bungee jumping is all about. That is what skydiving is all about. And we try and bring that as a part of our curriculum if we can. That learn to face your fear. If you can learn to face your fear and overcome it, you are rewarded with becoming an adrenaline junkie. Once you become an adrenaline junkie, nobody in the world can stop you.
There's a fine line there.
I agree with the point of, adrenaline junkie, and creating these adrenaline junkies is what I would like to focus my next few minutes on to both, Mr. Sumant and Ms. Prahlad. So one of the things that I've been hearing time and again is design-led innovations and the need for creating educationists who can address these adrenaline junkies. What are your key takeaways for today's educationists to encourage students and to create programs, who are actually aspiring to be there, because we're not talking about a smaller set, unlike in the past. Today we're talking about a large subset of the student community who are aspiring to be there. Let me start with Mr. Sumant, and then I'll jump to Ms. Prahlad.
I think what's important is to understand that your personal story and your personal sequence of where you come from has value. Because otherwise you always put yourself down and think, oh, I haven't done this or that, the other. But your personal history has brought you to a particular place. And I think in an educational context, if that is understood, so that when you make a liberal arts choice of, oh, I'll do, say, biology mixed with photography, mixed with, it's that unique combination of what interests you that makes you and allows you to put together stories and to put together a series of dots and to develop a point of view. I think that value for a student or a person who's in a process of learning, which I still am, is very important, because otherwise we are brought up, especially in the Indian context, as generations of people who have very low self-esteem. Because of that pounding, you're not made to think that you're valuable or that there's something unique about you. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be, how do you learn to shine? And I'm going back to what Prahlad and I were talking about. But it starts from that core value. And it starts from discovering yourself, and whether it's through counselors, whether it's through people who will reflect and be a mirror and allow you that freedom, who don't pressure you otherwise, because when you do that, you suppress bits of yourself and don't find a way to connect the dots in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ms. Prahlad, your thoughts on how can academicians reinvent themselves, if any?
See, the problem with academicians is that they actually don't go out into the real world to practice the theories that they teach. And when they do try it, they also realize that they're not practical. And that in real life, a lot of the theories that you are teaching are actually 100 years old and they're no longer relevant. Whether it's a Keynesian theory of economics or whether it's whatever it is, but the basic laws of demand supply will apply regardless. But everything else changes. The goalposts change all the time. And the methodology of how to reach the goal is so easy today because of the technology that is at your fingertips, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has already been reinvented for you. Adobe has actually done that for so many students, where you just have to, now everything is going to be voice activated. So for people like me who don't know the technology and are slightly shy of it, can turn around and talk to a computer. And the moment I can talk to a computer and it's a female voice, by God, I'll be fine.
But I believe you've been a lead digital creator. I mean, you've been trying to do experimentation to solve a lot of problems in the ad industry. You've been bringing new ideas, experience to real life, right? From real life to the digital world. And we're seeing them play out in a very, very realistic way. So, what are your thoughts? How have you brought this?
See, I'll tell you what, the ad film business is a very young business. And I believe that is its greatest value, because young people are not scared to experiment. And when new technology offers itself and somebody else is paying for your experimentation like a client, then you just jump into it because it's not your money anyway,
You're being brutally honest.
No. So young people, older people turn on and let's go back to the Steinbeck and let's do a splice. So, I mean, at least you can touch and feel what you're doing. Digitally, pata nahi kahan kya ho raha hai, But the youngster will turn and say, sir, I will show you how it's done. And it's so much quicker than what you're doing. And you live and learn from young people. Now, mentorship is such an important part of my entire life, because I learned mentorship at a very early age, purely for selfish reasons. Because I realized that the mentor learns much more from the mentee than the mentee does from the mentor. Because you can only teach the mentee a way, a path, a craft. The mentee teaches you how to think young and how to think technologically. And he takes all kinds of shortcuts. And he managed to deliver a quality product at half the time, at half the cost. So you suddenly wake up and say, hello, this is something new. Mujhe bhi sikha de. Now, the difference between managing a youngster and mentoring a youngster is that as a mentor, you are a partner. As a manager, you are a boss. And you assume that you know more than he does. And I think that's completely blown out of the water today. I think anybody above 45 needs to go back to school. Everybody below 30 is going to rule the world.
Well, it's also important, it's not just the mentor and mentee. I've always seen all the different kinds of projects, whether it's performance, theater, opera, a wedding. I've always seen it as a collaboration.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not just the person you're working with, it's also the other side of the fence who teaches you. And that's a key thing also to understand and to teach as a way of life is, yes, there needs, humility, because arrogance can sometimes hide fear.
Correct.
You face fear, and that's one thing. But when arrogance is used to hide the fear and becomes a facade, then that's another thing to teach, that how do you engage with that. Confidence, arrogance are two different things, because to be confident sometimes, to know I'm right and then stick up for it, that's important. And that comes from experience. And that comes from an instinct and intuition that you learn to trust.
And Suman, confidence comes about admitting you're wrong.
Yes.
Because that's the most important thing about confidence, is that you have no problem saying, hello, sorry guys, I've goofed. Let's go back to the drawing board. Only people who
I'd like to interfere here and just ask both of you, as an academician, as an academic leader, mentoring a lot of wannabes, what's been your biggest fear?
My biggest fear about wannabes is that they've been forced into doing what they're doing, not because they dream about it, but because their parents dream about it. And therefore, because the parents are paying the fees, they're shoved into being IIT, doing this, doing that, and they're really not happy. And therefore, because they're not inspired or happy, and they're just doing it because they feel that they need to be good, obedient children, they will never be great at what they do.
And also, one of the other aspects is, what I've discovered for myself, that when you follow your heart, the economics falls into place somewhere along the way.
Right.
It just does. But when that becomes the focus, then like you said, you're not following the dream. So then the choices you make become disparate and something doesn't work, and then you're struggling and again you're unhappy. So back to you, Prahlad.
Stumbling with your EMIs, and the only loyalty you have is from your dog, because he's the only one who's not demanding anything from you, at the end of the day. So the point is that I think a lot of these talks should be aimed at parents and not at students, because I think students still have the capacity to dream and to be given the confidence to be able to do what they want to do. And I think we need support from the parents to turn around and say, yeah, run with your dream. तू कर जो कुछ करना है. जब तू अगर नहीं सफल होगा, if कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया, तो फिर come to us ना. Our job is to catch you. So because when you push a kid out of the nest and tell him to fly, what is your role? Your role is to teach him how to fly firstly. As a parent, what is real parenting? Parenting is to be running under him and saying, boss, don't worry, fly. If you fall, we'll catch you. That is the role of a parent. Not to dream his dream. And say, हम fail हो गए अपने dream में, तो तू हमारा dream पूरा कर. I mean, this is such a common thing today, that what parents have dreamt about and failed in, they try and impose on their children. And it's so debilitating, It sort of clips your wings completely, because today, I'll tell you something very common. Now, for instance, if a child who is an IIT professional wants to be a designer and says, I want to be a mochi, and the parents have a cardiac and say, yaar, itna paisa kharcha hai tujhe, to final year IIT mein the abhi engineer banne wala hai, we're dreaming that you'll go to New York and we'll come and live with you, and you want to be a mochi. And then he mentions to his mother, Mom, only you will understand, Dad won't. I'm going to be a Jimmy Choo. So what do you think Jimmy Choo was? He was a Chinese mochi who became a brand. Okay, so there is no taboos today in whatever you do, as long as you do it well.
When I started working in fashion, for example, people in the artist and theater community would say, don't mention the F word. Because there was an internal racism. When I started engaging with weddings, there was, they just gave up on me. But the point was, I had no ego about what I engaged with. It was just another forum.
Correct.
And I think one of the biggest and most fun projects where so many things came together, and it just as an example, was a project in Italy. It was an Indian wedding. It the Cirque du Soleil. I was working with the team from Milan, which does the opening and closing for the Olympics, for the theatrical components.
Wow.
In terms of melding of technology, scale, performance, it was just a surprise because you see, in India, where else do you get that sense of scale where different things come together? Film is one, but it's on celluloid in the end and it's projected. But in live time, which is my passion, anything that happens live. And that for you, Supreet, was a classic example, from the lowest level of say, Photoshop or whatever, to the highest level of programming, how you work it all together with aerial, all kinds of things happening and fireworks, all programs. So how do you make your world complete for something that stays as a memory of a lifetime? Okay. Where you say, no, we dreamt beyond, and whatever I might have experienced in the process, the fact is that particular client, it's like the new royals in a sense, where you create and you become the patrons, where you say, I want the best of everything to create something that goes beyond what's been done before, to reach for the stars in another kind of way. And we all
if I may take away one key message from both of you in the last 5 to 10 minutes, one thing that have been propounded is creative expression and follow your heart and ensure that you see it to the end, experiment it, right? But there's also another theory which I keep hearing more often, saying that you just get 30 seconds to make an impact. And how do I do it? How important is it for students to make that right creative expression and they figure out that they're in the right path to make an impactful future? If we can shed some light around that, starting with you, Mr. Prahlad.
Well, 30 seconds is what we live on, yeah. I mean, our entire life revolved around 30 seconds of fame, of 30 seconds of failure, or 30 seconds of success. So you got to think like a crystal. You look at the Japanese sense of art and aesthetics. They have borrowed from India because it went through the Buddhist route from China into Japan. They honed it, and crystallized it to a jewel. Everything from calligraphy to poetry. Now, to them, look at a young samurai who's going into battle, and he has to write his death poem because he might not come back. And he is given 3 lines and 17 syllables. Then it's called a haiku. And the whole poem is based on the meaning of life while he's preparing to die. Look at the contradiction of that. Okay, the beauty of life is what his haiku is all about in his preparation to do battle and maybe die. Now, that's what a 30-second of life is you hone yourself into that discipline where all the kachara goes out and you are focused on that shining light which is just out of reach. And you keep at it until you get it right, until you are happy, until your passion is satisfied, until you write it so that you know that you are leaving a legacy for your children, for your coming generation. They'll read that poem and say, this man knew about life at the age of 21 because he went and became a kamikaze pilot. Okay, now that's what 30 seconds of life is all about. You live every second because the only thing that you can never get back, you get money back, you lose money, you make it, you lose everything, you make it. The only thing you never get back is time.
Sumant, your thoughts?
Well, I think time is critical because time is also endless. I might be 51, but I know that in many ways my engagement is timeless, you know. And it's that honing, exactly like Prahlad said, which is important because it works both ways. One is you living in that way of being mindful, being in the moment. Otherwise, you lose that time by looking ahead or regretting the past. Being in the moment is a very hard task. You really have to work at it. And very often, being in the moment is also being aware of the people you work with. So when I meet someone young, and it's a gift, it's a skill you develop, where again they're young, they haven't had enough experience. So as an educator, how do you develop the skill to be able, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, because there's certain people I've met the first time, and you cut through the layers and you find the light and say, this is something in a gut, I can feel there's something very special here. You know, there's something to develop, because many people cloud their surfaces and surrounds with so much noise that to find the truth is very hard. And then you have to engage with how much time will it take to strip away the layers and to find the heart and then start pressing the buttons to help that roll forward. You know, so I'm speaking both from the side of being someone who wants the opportunity to someone who's giving the opportunity to the younger kids who come my way, and many of them do. And it's a particular art, and I think Prahlad and I both agree that in our heads we see ourselves as samurai warriors.
Yes.
How we engage with the world. So this is one of it. You know, you just have, how long do you have for an interview? Very little. You actually decide in the first 30 seconds whether you're going to continue that interview, whether there's something of interest, and how you're going to engage very differently with other people, because they all come to you to be healed. I mean, as a samurai warrior, you're also a healer.
You're also a poet.
Also poet, but very
Yes.
importantly a healer, because you're trying to help them deprogram all the stuff they've come with.
Sumant, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, when youngsters come to me, I don't look at their qualifications. I don't look at whether they're first class. As a matter of fact, I reject most first classes because I find that they're too tunnel visioned and they have too many preconceptions. You know, I need to go back to basics. So to be able to strip away everything, I have to go through a process of unlearning.
Yes.
So they have to go through a process of unlearning before they become pure. And when they become pure, then I can take them wherever they want to go, not where I want them to go.
Yeah.
And then I see the purity of their abilities, their passion, their commitment. And the commitment is to themselves. It's not to anybody else. The commitment has to be to yourself, that this is what I want to do. And I can only help you and show you the way. That's all a mentor does, is helps you and shows you the way. You teach the mentor how to be young. And for both of us to be young at our age is because we are mentors and we learn much more from our students than they learn from us.
When I was 24, I had gone to work with a dancer choreographer called Chandralekha. She was 64.
Marvelous.
Yeah, and at points she was the little girl, and at points she was the wise old woman. And that was, I think, the biggest lesson I learned, that it is, that continuum is endless and you can be at any point in it, depending on what you engage with. So the sense of, oh, you have to do everything when you're young and beautiful is a complete fallacy. And that's what I think students and people getting into any profession have to remember, that it is, like you said, lifelong. You know, you can be the young child or the old wise person at any moment.
You remember Harindranath Chattopadhyay?
I know.
The poet. Okay, now Harindranath Chattopadhyay was also an actor, and he was in one of Ray's films called Shonar Kela.
Yes.
And he was a prankster. On the set, he would take the chaddis of the most serious person on the set, who was the camera. Okay, and he'd constantly be pranking him all the time. And he'd be chastised by Mr. Ray, saying, you can't do this to this man. He's very serious about his work. You can't fool around with him. And he had this brilliant excuse. He said, I'm not doing it. There's a little boy that lives inside me who comes out every now and then. And he does it. So I'm not to blame. I'm fine. You know, it's this little bugger who's living inside me that comes out without my asking and pays all these pranks. Now that is a perfect balance.
Yes.
Of what I feel is a creative person.
Yes.
Is that the balance between a little child who is looking at life innocently.
And with wonder, with wonder.
Yeah.
Wonderful, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Very valued opinions, Mr. Prahlad, Mr. Sumant. Thank you so much for your time. Let me move on to the next section for today. We have a small poll before we jump into the next section. Jyoti, can we have the poll on? So attendees, you can see the poll on your screen. In the current scenario, does the placements of mainstream careers differ from creative careers? You have 20 seconds. In the current scenario, does the placements of mainstream careers differ from creative careers?
There is no such difference, frankly.
Okay, I am closing the polls in, yeah. 84%, 133 say yes, 26 say no. Thank you so much for sharing your poll results. Jyoti, over to you for the next.
Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Kakkad. Thank you, Mr. Krishnan. And thank you, Supreet, for a wonderful session. I hope our audience enjoyed it a lot. So it's the time to move on to our next segment. I would request all of you to please stay back for the next segment, wherein we will hear about how technology can ease the process during today's crisis times. To share his expertise, we have with us Director of a leading business school, Dr. Himanshu Roy from IIM Indore. Welcome, Dr. Roy. Over to you, please.
Dr. Himanshu.
We lost him.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I was waiting to be unmuted. Thank God you guys did it. Have you
It's
muted
always
a
sign
professor?
language, Dr. Roy.
You muted a professor.
You remember Rumpelstiltskin?
Yes, absolutely.
So great, Dr. Himanshu, thank you for joining in. This section is specifically on what was so-called as the non-creative course, and I'm sure there are a lot of opinions about that title as well. So I'm going to be focusing on few things that are making an impact from collaborations, particularly under the current circumstances, and given the need that digital intervention is becoming the need of the day. I have few thoughts that I wanted to share, and then of course, I'd like to have your expert opinion on what's happening in today's scenario. How is education changing given the landscape of digital proliferation, and how can we address today's crisis? My first thought is more so on how do you look at technology and digital literacy under the current crisis times, and how are we emerging or how are we coping up on that point, Dr. Himanshu?
So I can see three very distinct questions in there, Supreet. You have asked me an extremely complicated question, but I'm trying to, I'll try to unravel each of those. Now, first of all, the way education is changing, it was changing irrespective of this pandemic. And by that, what I mean is that increasingly, I'm of the view that increasingly we are moving towards an auto-directed world, which means that the focus is not on the teacher. The focus is entirely on the participant. And it is the participants who are going to choose as to in what form and what kind of education are they going to actually take, which means it's not only the kind of courses, not only the programs that we are talking about, but it's also the form of the program. It is also the form of the content which will be decided by the participants. For example, there's been a study by one of the accreditation agencies which says that in the next 5 years, almost 80% of the information will be consumed in the audio-visual form, predominantly in the visual form. And therefore, whether we like it or not, as an academic institution, we have to move towards that, which means we have to create more and more of blended programs. We have to be more and more participant-centric, and we have to come up with creative ways and using digital media as an enabler, using technology as an enabler. So this was going to happen no matter whether the pandemic occurred or not. Now, coming to the pandemic particularly, we have to go online. we don't even have a choice. It's a Hobson's choice. There are two ways about it, that we have to move towards online. The interesting part over here is that in this pandemic, at least from an education perspective, I see an opportunity. And that is that my colleagues who so far were hesitant in moving towards an online mode are now increasingly realize that we don't have a choice and we need to actually get in there. But that's not the interesting part. You know, there's an extremely counterintuitive survey, there was a survey which was done by another accrediting agency. And what that survey found out was extremely counterintuitive. What they said was that the percentage of the faculty and the educators who have problems or who are uncomfortable in moving from in-class to online is less as compared to the percentage of students who are uncomfortable. So apparently students are more uncomfortable when it comes to moving online as compared to the faculty. I can see some reasons, because when we say online democratizes education, perhaps not, because when we say that online is a more democratized form of education and you can disseminate to a larger audience, we are assuming similar resources with everyone. So for example, a couple of our states, couple of the cities have only 2G connection, and therefore they would not have access to this particular Zoom meeting that we are doing. They will not have access to the content that we are creating. And therefore, I think what we need to do is we need to make all this process easier. Every institution needs to have a digital strategy. We need to figure out how are we going to actually impart this education. We need to look at education in terms of, we need to divide it in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and see as to what pedagogical tools are going to be relevant for each of these three components. Once we have managed to do that, I think then we will need to address the problems of access. So for example, a simple thing like if you stop your video, you'll probably require less bandwidth as compared to if you continue using your video. For example, I can see that you're recording this session, and once this recorded session is made available as e-material, perhaps you can actually compress it in a folder and send it through an email, which can be done even on a 2G connection. So we need to figure out these creative ways. That is one. And the second thing is we need to understand that online is not an extension of offline. So for example, the way you conduct a class in a classroom is not the same way that you can conduct a class when you're online. Online is a separate pedagogical tool itself. And therefore, as faculty, we have to continue to be learners. I mean, that's what Prahlad and Sumant were speaking about, and I completely agree with them. Because one of the axioms that I have lived by is a Socratic axiom who said that education and learning is the progressive realization of your own ignorance. The more you learn, the more you realize how ignorant you are. So for example, a person who's never stood in front of a camera would have absolutely no idea what standing in front of a camera means. We think it's extremely easy. Fortunately, I've dabbled with the theater a bit, and therefore I know what it really means to use a camera. I know what it really means to use the audio visual means. But a lot of my faculty, and Prahlad was right when he said that a lot of people do not have the experience which they talk about. So it's very easy to talk, Paropadesh Kushal Bhautere, but if you haven't gone through that experience yourself, then it's very difficult for you because you'll be far from the reality. You don't know what the ground reality is. And therefore, I'm happy, at least so far as the IIMs are concerned, that a lot of my faculty colleagues have actually worked before. They've actually worked in the industry. So I happen to be an engineer, Mia Kalpa, my fault and my parents' fault as well. But I worked with Tata Steel for 8.5 years before deciding to shift to academia. So I made that transition at the age of 30 when I decided that I didn't want to deal with electrical machines anymore. I wanted to deal with human beings. And therefore, I completely agree. I want to link it to what Prahlad and Sumant have been saying, that as students, and I can see that there's some students over here, as students, please realize that degree is important, but degree is important in so much as it does. What is far more important is, have you followed your imagination? Have you really dreamt about doing something or being in a kind of a world that you want to see yourself in? And are you doing something to create that world? Degree has to be a byproduct. The first thing that you need to do is that you want to learn. And there's no time foundation. There is no age limit at which you can learn. We should continue to learn, and we should forever be students.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Himanshu. You've been a leading business school, and you've been from the industry academia. Now, sharing a few pointers on what are the kind of programs that you see are going to shape the next generation students, particularly from the business field, business specializations, and also from technology. And I see that today creative and digital are kind of thinning the line between both business and technology programs from an specialization standpoint. Your thoughts on that, and what are you doing at IIMs and similar institutions?
Okay, absolutely. No, before I actually answer this question, let me also draw your attention to the studies which have been done about what are the skills that would be required in business 4.0 post the fourth industrial revolution. And I'll just name a couple of them. It's complex problem solving, it's critical thinking, creativity, people management, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. Now tell me, where does management education, typical management education as a functional education fit into this? It doesn't. So clearly we are talking about boundaries. What we are talking about is that we need people to appreciate science like a philosopher. So one of the things I keep telling people, a lot of time people ask me, hey, are you really an engineer? Because you seem to be saying everything which an engineer is not supposed to say. And I keep telling people, look, science can tell you how to make better and better guns and better medicines, but only philosophy will tell you when to use guns and when to use medicines. And therefore, if you're not a philosopher, you can never be a good scientist. You can never be a good engineer. You can never be a good management student. And therefore, what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to bring in courses that actually expand the horizon of thinking of our students. And technology plays a big role, because what we are trying to do is we are trying to simulate real life conditions. So my PhD is in negotiation, and I'm a practicing negotiator as well. And therefore, when I teach negotiation, I bring about a lot of simulations in terms of technology. I bring in a lot of video elements. I bring in a lot of elements which are out there in terms of movies. So I use a lot of films when it comes to teaching negotiation. For example, if you have to teach, say, persuasion, then 12 Angry Men is perhaps one of the best films that I've ever seen when it comes to persuasion. Of course, Ek Ruka Hua Faisla is again something which is inspired by that film, but I like 12 Angry Men. And I use Game of Thrones because that's far more contemporary, and I clearly admire some of the work which has gone into Game of Thrones. So we are using a lot of films, we are using a lot of material which is in there, and we are also coming up with courses which are very, very interesting. So you'll be surprised. I teach a course called Leadership Through Literature, where we pick up pieces of literature, and by analyzing those, we build frameworks of leadership. So we have certain books. So for example, we have a book called Siddharth. If you haven't read it, any of you who are listening to me, you must read it. It's a must-read book by Herman Hesse, a beautiful book. And I think there was a movie made long time back with Shashi Kapoor in it, which was a partial adaptation of the book Siddharth. Now, Siddharth has the theme, passion and compassion attached to it. And what we are trying to say through that particular book is that as a leader, you do need to have compassion. But if you pick up the villains of the world, you will see that even they had a lot of passion. So what were they really missing? What they were missing was compassion. And therein, we also differentiate between compassion and empathy. We say empathy, you empathize with somebody, you put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, not done, I'm not good. I agree that this person is not well or is not doing so great. But when you're compassionate, not only do you empathize, but you also do something to mitigate the misery of the other person. Now, these are the concepts we try to bring about. And this is just one of the examples. I also use a lot of Sanskrit literature, since I also happen to be a Sanskrit scholar. So I use a book called Mudra Rakshas, which is a play by Vishakha Dutt, which talks about the story of Chanakya annihilating the Nanda kings. And therefore, we use a lot of these kind of courses. There's a course called Management Through Theater, where through theater, we teach them multiple elements of management, including finance, operations, etc. And my own students have done a couple of productions. So very recently, they did a production of Merchant of Venice. Of course, Shakespeare is an all-time favorite everywhere. And personally, I love Shakespeare and I love Kalidas. So English literature and Sanskrit literature are two favorites of mine, and I try to bring them into the studies. Mahabharata. I use a lot of Mahabharata, my book, my only book, very uncreatively titled Negotiation, has a lot of incidents of Mahabharata which have been converted into business situations. And not just that, we are also trying to build audiovisual material and simulations based on these creative materials. So, there's this very interesting blend of what has traditionally been called creative methods and creative, the outpours, the art of storytelling, for example. A lot of management theory is being taught through storytelling. If you look at the way cultures are built, so Tatas, the entire cultural history of Tatas, the way culture has percolated down to the Tata companies has been through storytelling. We have heard so many stories about J.N. Tata and J.R.D. Tata, that is how the Tata's culture has been built in, the Tata's culture of service, putting the country first, putting the country before anything else. So I think there's this very interesting blend happening, and it is happening in the management world as well. So all of you who would be frowning at traditional institutions like IITs and IIMs, rest assured we are looking at these things as well.
Marvelous. That's really quite a revelation.
Yes.
We have a few questions from audience, Dr. Himanshu.
Sure.
One from Nitin Joshi. How are organizations and institutions like you making changes, seeing the next 3 to 5 years, when as per the study shared, 80% of the info consumed by students will be on AV formats only?
So what we are doing is we are converting a lot of material into audiovisual forms. We are using a lot of MOOCs. We are building a lot of MOOCs. And earlier, so IIMs traditionally, at least the older IIMs, they follow something called the case method. So wherein there is a case which hinges around a business decision that needs to be made. So it pivots around a business decision that needs to be made. And through discussion in the classrooms, we try to come up with multiple perspectives. So once again, I think this was being said by Meghna, that people try to find out a solution, whereas in creative courses, you don't have a one solution, a single solution. Likewise, in management, you don't have a single solution. We never talk about single solution. We say that there could be multiple decisions that can be taken. But what you need to do is you need to separate perspective from an opinion, because these two are completely different. Everyone has an opinion. But can you really build a perspective which you can substantiate with something more? So we use cases to discuss those. Now what we are doing is we are building cases which are partially audiovisual. So for example, there's a case study which talks about leadership, which is not just a case, but it talks about Tata's response to the terrorist incident in Mumbai. So what did they really do? And through that, can we learn something about organizational resilience? So right now, even about this particular pandemic, so three of my faculty colleagues, and the fourth one, we are collaborating with another friend of mine who teaches at the University of Melbourne, a German guy, then a professor at Chicago University, and another professor in Japan. And we are trying to look at how have organizations actually reacted to this pandemic, and how have leaders reacted to this pandemic. And what we are trying to create is an audiovisual kind of a material, substantiated, of course, with certain factual and with certain case-based kind of things. And this will then be converted into material to talk about organizational resilience and leadership fortitude. So increasingly, we are going towards a blended pedagogical model and blended courses as well.
So, just taking a leading question in the similar lines, Professor Himanshu, Moneymaker Natation, she's got a question specifically coming in from areas or educational systems which does not provide necessary infrastructure across all regions. How do blended and non-traditional learning methods become part of mainstream teaching, particularly from learning and pedagogy standpoint? And I think I can open this up to Meghna Gaipuri as well after your response.
So the reason why we are going for blended models is twofold. One is, as I said, that we move in towards an autodidactic world where people are going to choose as to what is it that they wish to consume and how is it that they wish to consume whatever it is that they choose to. And therefore, when we create a blended model, we are also assuming that not everybody learns the same way. See, standardizing the modes of learning is a necessity for us for the simple reason. Ideally, I would want to know as to how each and every student of mine is willing to learn and finds it the best way to learn, and then provide the student with that kind of learning. But it's not possible with an institution so big. So we have 1,800 students. I wouldn't be able to do that. But what we try to do, therefore, is we try to use multiple pedagogies so that at least one pedagogy works. And likewise, when it comes to assessment, people say that, hey, why are you taking only written exams as a mode of assessment? Because there are some students who may not be very good at taking written exams. And we agree. And therefore, what we do is we try to use multiple methods of assessment. So including oral methods of assessment, including group assignments, including some personal work, including coming up with an academic paper, so on and so forth. So I think going ahead, when we make these blended programs, it is for two reasons. One is to reach out to a larger number of people. So, we have 240,000 people who write CAT and therefore would want to be in an IIM, whereas the number of seats across all 20 IIMs is probably 6,000. And therefore, there's a lot of students, there's a large population out there who we cannot reach out to. And this is one of the ways in which we can reach out to those people. And second, as I said, we can reach out to them and make them learn in ways that they choose to learn.
Yep. Ms. Meghna, your response to this?
Yeah, so, first of all, Dr. Himanshu, you spoke really, really well. A lot of things that we took back from there. So first of all, I'd just like to say, in terms of creative education, we have no other choice but to have blended education, especially with what we tried to do, where we took something, a career that was really offbeat. Filmmaking was not looked at, or acting or design was at that point wasn't looked at, something that could actually go into mainstream education. We took that, we blended it with a university model. We took university guidelines, put them into place. So a lot of our teaching is theoretical and hands-on. A lot of our teaching requires, the online medium, like Dr. Himanshu said, a lot of, customizing of learning happens. And that is really difficult because we as well are now 1,200 students. But what happens is we make that effort that our teachers are not just teaching, they are mentoring. So a lot of our teachers come from yes, the industry background, but they are constantly being trained to be good academicians, because I believe very strongly in academic rigor coming into place if you want to really train your student to exceed in a career in the mainstream. So I feel like a good balance between academics and theory and practical is very, very important. So yeah, a lot of blended learning happens at Whistling Woods as well. And I don't think there's any other way to do it when it comes to creative education.
Thank you, Meghna. Question to Mr. Kakkar.
Mr. Kakkar wants to say something. Yeah.
Sir, what I want to ask you is that most B schools teach people to look for jobs. How much stress do you give on entrepreneurship, and what is the difference between a job seeker and an entrepreneur in terms of your curriculum?
Yeah, I can see that Prahlad is trying to corner me on these issues, but I have an answer. So first of all, no, in one of the interviews that I gave after I took over this particular position a year and 4 months back, I made it very, very clear that IIMs are not placement agencies. So if anyone thought that we are here to provide jobs to people, we are not. That's not what we do. Our mission statement very, very clearly says that we are here to provide contextually relevant world-class education and create socially conscious leaders. That's it. So IIM Indore in particular is here and exists to create responsible leaders. The fact that they also get jobs in areas that they choose is once again a byproduct of what we are trying to do. And coming particularly to the entrepreneurship thing, I don't think an entrepreneur is any different from anybody else. So I've always been of the view that you need to follow your dreams. If your dream is to actually make piles of money and sleep on it, by all means do so. I'm not here to elevate those people who go into social work and then put themselves on a high moral pedestal, thinking that they are doing a greater service to God knows who. Just like, for example, I have always considered Krishna as a yogi. I do not consider those who sit in some cave in the Himalayas and think that they are the biggest yogis, because you're not contributing anything to the universe. You're not giving anything back to the universe. Krishna lived in the universe and then tried to follow yoga. through the Nishkam Karm. But I'm not going to get into that. That happens to be my favorite part of Mahabharata. But what I'm trying to say is that it really doesn't matter what job you choose so long as you have chosen something that you love to do. You're doing something that you really love, and therefore you're doing your best in it. Coming particularly to entrepreneurship, what we have done is we have provided something called an entrepreneurial track. So students who choose the entrepreneurial track, they are allowed to forego half of their credits in the second year. We provide them with help to start with their venture. And then we actually assess them on how they are doing with their venture. And not just that, when this was introduced 2 years back, we thought there'll be multiple takers. Much to our surprise, there weren't many. And we realized that one of the reasons why there weren't many was because we said that, look, you can't be in the placement system if you want to go for the entrepreneurial track. And a lot of these people had bank loans to pay back. And therefore, once I took over this position, what I said was that you go and try this out for 2 years. If in 2 years you do not succeed, or if in 2 years you determine or decide, or you figure out that this is not your cup of tea, you want to have a regular job, come back into the system and we'll help you again to provide a placement for you. So I'm just hoping that this is going to spur more people into entrepreneurship. And the second thing that we are doing is that the incubator that we currently have, we are converting it to a Section 8 company. And therefore, we are going to now, through that Section 8 company, also provide seed money and funding to those students who start their own ventures.
That's marvelous. But how about the motto for entrepreneurship being that the business of business is risk and value adding?
Oh, absolutely.
And that
I should note it down somewhere.
Yes.
Very difficult to get something from Prahlad.
We have, I'm sorry, Jonathan, we have few more questions, pouring in. First of it to, I think, all of you. How do we change the mindset of government institutions to adopt creative learning process? You can take a dig at it for a minute, all of you.
By actually incentivizing private institutions who are doing that, so that the government institutions look at that as a model. I feel like we all need to work together. We need to work with government institutions. So we do a lot of training sessions with faculty as well from various institutions. And I find that really, really helpful. So when faculty and students of government institutions and private institutions who are trying to be different come together, that learning then becomes a collaborative effort, and that change then becomes inevitable.
You look at the Film Institute of India, it's done an amazing job in terms of producing such great filmmakers, technicians, etc., over so many years consistently. So it's because it's a government institution does not mean you can dish it, because it also depends on the curriculum and the faculty.
Yeah. And another thing that people probably forget is that IITs and IIMs are also government institutions at the end of the day. So we have autonomy, we have a fair degree of autonomy, but these are government institutions. And you'll be surprised. So I work closely also with I'm trying to work closely also with CBSE to look at what we can do for school education. And you'll be surprised that CBSE was the first board which actually managed to put all its material into the e-material form. Now, not many of us are aware that CBSEs actually did that. And also, they are now trying to bring in elements like emotional intelligence into their school curriculum. And the last meeting that I had with CBSE chairperson, she was extremely gung-ho about bringing in elements like spirituality, bringing in elements like climate change, bringing in elements like environment. Also, Jane Goodall has started something in India called Roots and Shoots. I mean, she started it across the world, but she's also brought in Roots and Shoots to India. And once again, we were trying to build it up at the school level. So the schools are trying to become creative, but given the kind of population that we have and given the kind of constraints that we have, I think the process is going to be a little slow. But again, I would say, rest assured, even the government seems to be working on those lines. And I think it falls on institutions like us to provide them with support, with continuous support, and enable them to be able to do so.
We have a very interesting question, come in. Degree in digital technologies and branding. What's the scope next 3 to 5 years horizon? We'll start with Sumant and then Mr. Prahlad and the rest of you. The last question for the afternoon.
Unmute him. Sumant, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm just unmuted. I didn't realize I'd been muted. A degree is really a process of education. How much you take out of it versus someone else who has an instinct and learns on the job. It's very hard to define and separate. If it's there, it's great. I know that NID has some certain aspects of it, and I went through it, so I'm aware of it. So it's a positive thing. But I think the key thing is, amongst all the conversations, and I enjoyed listening to you, Dr. Himanshu, that was, I can see the child and the wise person in you, and it's exciting. And Krishna and the Mahabharata is also a favorite with me. But I think an important aspect over here is, and I keep saying it to my team or people I work with, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it.
Absolutely.
And that's actually, that applies to something like even a digital thing. I mean, how do you apply the rules of moving ahead? Because when you talk about working with the government, for example, and I've grown up with a bureaucrat father, so I had a strong resilience against engaging with that, because that particular pattern of something that was not autonomous became, you came in, you did something, the next person came, they forgot about it, changed something, went back 2 steps, So anything has the same rules applied to it in terms of taking it forward with confidence. That's as much as I can say about that, Supreet.
Great. Ms. Prahlad, your...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, please.
No, I just want to add that digital technology today cannot be separated out. I think that's part of every subject that we learn. I think 2 things, digital technology and design thinking. I feel these things need to be an integral part of every education that we have, whether it's law, medicine, design, engineering, architecture, or filmmaking. So I think I don't know whether the question means that we need to have a separate degree for digital technology. It's part of our lives now, and we need to learn it as we go. And in terms of branding, yes, it's extremely important for people who are interested in advertising and branding to get a formal education in that. And Mr. Kakar can add to that, this area.
The digital, culture today is not something that you learn, it's a language. Kids today learn it from the time that they're old enough to speak. Most of them are on the computer long before they can actually articulate themselves, and they speak really bad English because everything is in short form. So when you turn around and say that we are going to teach children a digital discipline, it's rubbish. It's a language that they've grown up in. It's the adults that you have to teach digital language, because anybody who's above 40 has to go back to school, because they're the ones who need to learn, because they never grew up talking digital language. The children today don't need digital language to be taught. They already know it. They're conversing all the time. And they're doing it as a multitasking thing. They're doing it almost like, they're talking to somebody else on their phones, they're talking to their parents with their mouths, and they're talking 2 different languages simultaneously. Now, that kind of multitasking I've never seen before, frankly. And they've got, they're perfectly comfortable doing it. So my belief has always been that in management especially, that everybody above 45 needs to go back to school if they want to be relevant. Anybody who is below 30 needs to be empowered, because they are talking the language of tomorrow. And they don't need to be taught that language. People who are above 35 need to be taught the language, because it's something that they had to learn. It was an artificially induced learning. For children today, they've grown up with it. It's like abusing in Punjabi. Everybody does so.
Fantastic, gentlemen and lady, Mr. Prahlad, Dr. Himanshu, Mr. Sumant, Ms. Meghna Gaipuri. Thank you so much for your time, your valuable thoughts, and panelists and participants. Thank you so much for your cooperation and various pointers. You've been a great sport. With that, I'd like to pull the curtains down for today afternoon. See you all. Stay safe and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Supreet.
Supreet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Just a minute, last minute. Thanks for a wonderful session. So on the behalf of Economic Times, I would like to thank all our speakers for sharing such thoughtful insights and all the participants for joining us for this webinar. There's been a very good active participation from our participants, and we do hope it has been a useful time spent with us. Once you log off, automatically a window will open to capture your feedback, which helps us to bring tailor-made content for you. So please fill in as detailed as possible and stay tuned with us for the third chapter of the webinar. Thank you once again, everyone. Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Stay
much.
safe.